start off the top and see how far we get. So Mike Spears asked, I'd like to know what role the panelists believe capitalism has played in the many crises we are now facing. I guess start with Randy for that one.
Well, I'm going to go with all of them since we've had capitalism. I mean, capitalism is kind of excellent at generating wealth. I don't think any system has ever been created that's better at generating wealth, but absolutely terrible at distributing it. And the tendency in any thriving capitalist economy is for inequality to grow. And it's almost like it contains the seeds of its own demise at all times in economic terms, because once the inequality gets bad enough, then actually demand in the economy, which is the ordinary people's ability to buy things, collapses, and then you go into these crises again and again and again. I'm not that much of an expert on how capitalism has caused health crises, but I'm pretty sure there's someone on this call who is. So.
You know,
that was your segue.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I can't say I'm a real expert on capitalism. I think that really my whole beef with it right now is the fact that we're not including the right things in our equations. And so, and then we're patting people on the head and saying we can't afford that. And you're like, but what about, like, you know? I think that I think I'm going to start challenging people a lot more on what they're including in their actual equations when they start challenging me on answers and final what's under the bottom line, because there's a lot of real fudging in there and it's harmful.
Yeah. Sorry, Randy.
I'll just add to that. I was on the Joe Biden website today for some reason, I don't know what, and he used an interesting expression, which is that the U.S. economy is privileging wealth over work. And there are so many ways, I'm thinking of banks, I'm thinking of landlords, that some people are working for other people all their lives, basically, and not having anything to show with it at the end. And so that to me is a crisis in itself.
Mm-hmm. I was just going to mention that when we were talking to some local media here, and almost always the question goes, well, how are we going to afford tackling climate change? How are we going to afford homelessness? How are you going to afford this? And it's like, next time you go to a municipal or provincial or federal kind of like groundbreaking, ask them, how are you going to pay for that highway? How are you going to pay for that? How are you going to pay for all of these things? Like, why is it only that question gets asked when it relates to care, and it doesn't go when it relates to growth and development and infrastructure, right? Like, not saying that not all infrastructure is important, but it seems like that question only gets brought up for certain things. Anyways, Adam, there's people that have other questions than me droning on. So do you have another one?
Yeah, so I'm having to be selective here, so I'm sorry if yours is not going to get asked, but I'm going to try and ask ones that are a little bit outside of the usual here. So what would you, from Robert Case, what would you expect the ecological impacts of a universal basic income would be? More consumption, less consumption due to more efficient distribution of resources? And let's flip the order around and start with Dr. Howard.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's an interesting question. I think that if you end up with a little more consumption, you know, it may not be in places where it's horribly harmful. You know, like if people are consuming more fruits and vegetables and we've created a local sustainable economy where we're growing those close to home, I mean, is that bad? Right. And so I think that, you know, there could be, but it's, I think it's difficult to say. And how are you measuring it? Are you measuring it in terms of GDP? Whereas, you know, Randy said, some of it's positive, some of it's negative. So I'm not sure, but I'm willing to give that a go and see where we end up.
Yeah, and I don't think we want to say to somebody who's on social assistance Ontario, where an individual gets $733 a month, I'd love to boost your income, but it would be bad for the environment. Doesn't really sound like a message that, that first of all, that we want to put out there, or that makes any sense. There's plenty of wealth around, and we don't have to have some people living in poverty while others are driving Maseratis through my neighborhood.
Another one, Adam?
Yes. All right. There's a bit of a hot potato one here from Sandy Agnew. How do you see the overpopulation of the planet and overconsumption of resources factoring into the recovery? I think you might have to split out overpopulation and overconsumption there, perhaps. Anyways, I know that's a topic for people, and I think it can be addressed in a number of different ways. I'm interested to hear your answers. Randy.
Well, I guess the first thing I would say is the planet's going to be fine. If humanity destroys itself in the next 100 years or whatever, the planet will figure out a way to manage without us just fine. But I think implicit in that question is a sort of notion that we have too many people. And if we have that notion, then we must surely be thinking that some people are more important than others, which I don't buy. We have the people that we have, and they all have equal rights to be part of, a better world. So would it be better to stabilize population growth? I don't doubt it at all. It would make a difference, but I think we can also solve problems in other ways.
Yeah, I think it's helpful that both of those were posed at the same time, because the problem is really consumption. It's the fact that I consume way more than the people I was serving when I was working in a slum in Djibouti. And so, like, epically more. And we know that from Canada's carbon footprint per person compared to other places in the world. And so the way, something that's really lovely, the way I like to look at this, and the way I think we all should look about it, is that, ensuring that women and girls have access to education and ensuring that they have access to the family planning that they tell us that they want. It reduces all sorts of health problems. It reduces mortality. It allows women the opportunity to go to school, to be able to be empowered within their communities, to become some of the leaders in their communities. And as I was mentioning, across different continents, when women have a chance to make more pro-social decisions. So fund things like health and education more than a similar group of male decision makers. And so, and the rate of population growth goes down. So really, it's one of the major win-win-wins of the world, I think. Let's fund all that. Let's fund that, because there's still a big funding gap, and we don't need to have that. So if we're worried about that, let's stop talking in terms of overpopulation. Let's talk about it in terms of empowering women, and let's get that done.
Right. Absolutely.
Great answer.
Yeah, we're at 5. Well, just a little bit before 5 o'clock, and I'm sure we have quite a few more questions. But to be true and respectful to our speakers' times who've agreed to be here, and for everybody else on Facebook, Twitter, and whatever who probably had planned to eat dinner at 5 o'clock as soon as the bell hit, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you to both of you. As a quick reminder, within the chat, Adam has put the contact information, their Twitter handles, where you can find more about them and their policies and their organizations. Also, please, if you haven't done so already, hit the link for our survey, or just go check out justrecoverysimcoe.ca and support your local recovery efforts. If you're not from Simcoe, find somebody else who's fighting for this. To Randy and Dr. Howard, it's been an amazing conversation. I think we probably could have gone on about Lego and Doozers and Fraggle Rock for probably another hour or so. But thank you to everybody, and thank you for joining us, all of our audience. And we'll be in touch. We'll be having more of these series to talk about Just Recovery and talk about who it impacts and how we can move forward. So we appreciate all of your time, and have a good evening all.